G'day guys, welcome back to another episode of Sailing Popao. In the last episode you may have seen we gave you a tour of Popao, the mothership, and this episode we're going to give you a tour of Ikale, our tender. So Ikale, for those that don't know, was our dog in Tonga and Popao was our other dog. So Popao means outrigger and was named after the local beer in Tonga, and Ikale is eagle. So there you go. So it's a Highfield.
Fitting name.
Fitting name because
it soars like an eagle.
Flies. We really call this the mothership and Popao's the tender because all our adventures happen in this boat. It's been so good to us. Yeah, so it's coming on nearly 3 years old now, and it is just going strong. It's a Highfield 340 Classic Hypalon. Yeah, so the Hypalon has been absolutely amazing. I would definitely recommend it over PVC, especially in the tropics and the hot sun. You know, we've had fishing hooks, marlin bills, spears, crab pots. Like, it's copped a lot and it's held up really well. So we've had a lot of questions about how our tender is set up and the kind of gear we carry, because we do take this thing, you know, up to 40 nautical mile trips from Popao, which, you know, a lot of people think we're crazy, but I'll give you a rundown of everything we put in here, the safety gear, the spares, the sounder setup, everything like that. Anyway, let's check it out. So it's a Highfield 340 Classic. The Classic has the false floor and the larger bow locker in it. So we originally really wanted the ultralight, which doesn't have the floor in it. It's a bit lighter and a bit more forgiving on our davits, but Jessie really wanted the false floor, and I'm glad she chose it, because when you are not diving and you want to stay dry and you're transporting shopping or people or anything,
fishing,
it just keeps the floor nice and dry. We have a Mercury 15 Super 2-stroke. We chose a 2-stroke because it was the lightest engine available, but now the new 4-strokes are catching up with that weight. So tender's 71 kilos, the outboard's about 42, 43. Then we've got a 25 litre fuel tank up the front, so it's a fair bit of weight on our davits. So we take the engine off every time we go on a offshore passage. With the way the fuel prices are going these days, we're going to definitely look at upgrading to maybe a 4-stroke, a 20. I think they make a 20. Tohatsu make a 20 horsepower. It's about the same weight as that, so more horsepower, a bit lighter, and it'll be a lot better on fuel. So this Merc 15 Super will push the boat at about 21 knots max speed. And with a 25 litre tank we'll get about 40 nautical miles out of it. So we regularly do trips like that off Popao, and anything more we'll just carry a small 5 litre jerry can and just tuck it under the seat for a bit of redundancy. So around the back end we've got our wheels. We looked at a few different options. There was a lot of hard plastic ones and really big inflatable ones, but we went with this New Zealand company, Beachmaster. Really cool wheels. You can actually deflate them down to about 5 psi, so it's kind of like a 4-wheel drive tire when it's really soft sand. But the mechanism's super easy to use. It just kind of locks up like that and just drops and locks down. So yeah, we just installed them ourselves. Super easy. They're about 300 bucks, I think, Australian. And you can also get a removable one, which I kind of wish we did. You can remove this whole wheel off and just leave these 4 studs that the wheel mounts on, because we find sometimes when you're in heavy seas they can come unlatched and they just spill water into the tender, and you don't realise until you look down there's water everywhere.
How easy is it for us to pull this tender up the beach? A lot of people ask us, you know, if it's too heavy for them, and I'd say if you're not pretty fit, it probably is too heavy for you.
Yeah, so the tender, like I said, the tender with the engine and the fuel tank and the anchor, you're looking at about 130 kilos. So with these wheels, if it's not too soft, I can lift the tender up the beach myself, no worries.
If it's not very steep.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Definitely something to keep in mind there. You know, the ultralight's obviously a heaps lighter boat, but you lose that false floor and the big storage locker up the front.
It is quite hard for two of us, like the Keppels for example, we struggle to pull that up the beach.
Sometimes. It depends on how soft the sand is.
Yeah.
And how your tyres are inflated, but yeah, obviously we always try to time it best with the tide so you don't get stuck and have to drag the tender over, you know, a kilometre of soft sand. But yeah, they've worked well for us, and if you're going to get wheels, I would recommend them. Not sponsored, but that's an honest review of those tyres. I'll show you the transducer. I'll give you a rundown of the sounder box that we installed, but I'll just show you how we installed the transducer while we're out here. So it's tricky getting a perfect position for the transducer because there's limited real estate once we put the wheels in there. So what I did is I didn't want to drill any extra holes in the transom if I didn't need to. So what I did is I got this chopping board material and I traced out the contour of the transom here, cut it out, drilled some holes, countersunk them on some bolts on the other side, and just Sikaflex that on there. So that sits in there now with the bolts coming out this way, and now that completely avoids having to drill holes in your transom. And with these spring washers and the wing nuts, you can adjust the height until you get the correct positioning of your transducer, which is really handy. So you can adjust it up and down. But
have you had to adjust that?
At first, when we first set it up, I played around with the height a bit, but basically trying to keep it just underneath the base of the transom there.
And that's why you glued it on, right? Because you weren't sure how it would scan. You wanted it to scan while we were driving. Yeah, well, I mean, ideally you want it to scan at high speeds so you can find new spots and know the depth the whole time. So what I've done is I run the cable up here. It comes with a really long cable, obviously, for mounting it in a larger boat, but I just decided to coil it up because you can't really cut and splice the end. So what I've done is I've run it through this tilt tube on the engine, and the plug actually fits perfectly through that tilt tube, so keep it from chafing on this sharp edge here. What are you doing? Making sure that dog doesn't pee on my
bag.
camera bag.
Hello. Hello. And just to stop that sharp edge, I've just got a piece of old spear gun rubber and I've cut it open like this. And that just sits on, a bit of soap, and you wedge it in there, and that just keeps it from chafing. So it comes out, another tube there, and then you've got the coil of the transducer here. This cord permanently lives inside the boat, just in a coil like that. When we're not using it, I just have this little cap that came with one of our other plotters, and that just protects the water from going into the plug. And this whole system here, which I'll go into a bit later on, that's standalone, so that comes out. It's got the battery in it, everything there. So that just comes out of the boat, and then we just get this bungee, and that just holds the cord there. Yeah, so we didn't want to permanently mount the sounder because, you know, you're leaving your tender, you're going to docks, you don't want someone to just come and steal it, or steal all your marks. So we take this back to Popao to charge it because we don't have a charging system on the outboard or a battery on board. And yeah, I'll take you through how this all goes together and how you can make your own one. Really handy, changed our fishing and diving. So we'll just cut back to Popao and I'll show you how this goes together and how you can make one yourself. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a rundown of our little portable sounder setup. It's a Lowrance hook reveal unit. Super cool. It makes its own maps, which has been really handy, and it has the world base map on it, so you basically don't need any chart card. It has it all on there already. You can do, we've just got the split shot transducer, which does the regular traditional sonar and down scan. You can get the triple shot with the side scan, but the side scan transducer is a bit long for the tender. I'm still in two minds whether I get one for kind of river barra missions and things like that. But anyway, it was pretty easy to set up. It was a fun little project. Basically that's it there. So that just unplugs, that comes off there, and I've just mounted the base on top of the enclosure box, and in under there, you won't really be able to see it, is a cable gland that I've put on. You can kind of see it there. So that basically is just like a rubber grommet that gets tighter as you tighten it, and that keeps it waterproof. From any electrical store you can get these enclosure boxes, electrical enclosures, and the grommet and all that stuff. Pretty cheap. In here is the heart of it all. We've got a iTech 7 amp hour lithium battery. So we did have your traditional, I'll pull it out, I'll show you. It's basically your standard 7 amp hour kind of, I think they use them for like fire alarm system batteries and, you know, a few other things. But they usually come in lead acid, or they used to anyway, and they weigh like 3 kilos or something. It's super crazy. So when iTech sent us this 7 amp hour one, it just feels like a plastic casing. We were actually doubting there was actually anything inside. It's super light, and because it's lithium, you can use the whole 7 amp hours pretty much before it shuts itself down, and it charges heaps faster. So whereas our old lead acid battery that was in here, super heavy first of all, and it you know, you'd get probably 1.5 days or 1.5 trips out of it before it runs out. We probably get about three odd trips out of this before we charge it. I'll show you how we charge it later on. So I'm just showing you how to set it up here. This box usually stays fully sealed. I never really open it up. This is just how I've done it. Just got some foam that wedges the battery in place. I've wired it up so we've got the fuse for the transducer going to that power plug that you can see coming out there through the cable gland, and that just goes onto these little spade connectors that hook up to the battery. And then I have another 2 wires that actually go directly to the battery, which I've just got a little coldie holder here that stops the water getting in. So that sits in our little cup holder on the seat of the boat, and here I've got one of these connections that I've got just from J-Car or something like that. It's a waterproof charging connector. So I've just got a separate 240 volt charger that plugs into the inverter, and that'll charge the battery overnight, no worries. And then when we're all done, I just got one of these little rubber caps that goes on top just in case any water gets in there. I tuck it right up in there and just slide that on top, and yeah, because it's face down like that all the time, we never get any water in there. And it used to allow the old lead acid battery to breathe, but with the lithium it doesn't really matter. So for this section here that sits into our cup holder, it's actually just an old plastic through hole fitting, but you can just get like a PVC end cap and a piece of PVC, and you could just glue it on there and drill a hole through that for your mount in the cup holder. And this coldie holder that just sits on top gives it a bit of water protection, and it gives it a nice tight snug fit onto the seat cup holder. So that's basically the wiring harness that I made. It's super simple. You just got the power cord from the transducer, which goes to the fuse that comes with it. That goes into the positive and negative side of these little connectors, and I've run the other side to the battery, and then on the other side as well I've just branched off that charging positive and negative, so that'll charge the battery.
Yep.
Okay, so that's your base there with the hole underneath it, you can see. So I basically get the wiring harness, I put the charging cord down into the hole, like that, and then you basically just want to make it fit neatly. So you put that there, plug the spade connectors in, that sits in like that, and then I basically get the extra foam. You can get a foam block and make it a bit neater, but it seems to work for us, no worries. The old lead acid actually had to be vented, and that's why I had the hole in the bottom, but these are fully sealed, so got their own little BMS in there, and it'll shut down before it gets undercharged or overcharged. Anyway, so that's basically all that's inside the heart of the sounder. So I'll just put that back on there. It comes with a little, these enclosure boxes have this little O-ring or little gasket there to keep it waterproof. Just make sure you don't pinch any of the wires. And you're putting the lid back on. Screw it down. They are a little bit brittle, these things, so do not over tighten it, because you will crack it, which I did.
When? Just saying.
No, ages ago when I started.
It's cracked.
A little bit, but doesn't seem to wreck the seal. Anyway, so that's how this lives all the time. I never take that lid off unless the battery starts rattling around or something like that, but it's very rare. I will show you how we charge it. So I just bought one of these from J-Car, I think it was, super cheap, like 30 bucks. Just a smart battery charger. And I just cut the ends off because it had the alligator clips, and I just put one of these, I think it's Deutsch connectors? Deutsch connector? Deutsch? I'm not sure.
Not douche.
D-E-U-T-S-C-H. Deutsch. Anyway, if anyone knows how to pronounce it, please tell me. But that's the waterproof connector that you use for the bottom of the sounder. So basically, to charge it, I just go through the inverter, use this like bugger all amps. I take the little cap off. I always make sure the sounder's unplugged. I don't take it off, I just unplug it. Whether or not it's a risk, I just take that precaution anyway. Plug it in, turn on the power, turn the inverter on. And then it just reads the battery voltage, you know, pretty simple. Turn it on, turn it to lithium. Okay, on lithium. And that's it. Anyway, so that takes, you know, a few hours to charge up, and good to go for about 3 fishing or diving sessions in the battery. So and when we're done, we just unplug that, put the cap on, tuck it in, and you're good to go. So once it's charged, it fits in this cup holder perfectly that comes on the Highfields. Just stick that in there. Chuck your bungee over the top. Take the cap off. Store it in the little bolt hole there. Plug your transducer in. And you're good to go. And that's great. That's just fully waterproof, and yeah, sounder in your tender. So while we're here at the stern, I'll show you these this rail blazer mount that we put in. New Zealand company makes these rail blazer. They're a little bit expensive, but they're definitely worth it. That's just one of the rod holders they make. It's kind of like a universal star mount, and that's where our anchor light goes. And when we're diving, we have the anchor light, which is, I'll show you. So there's the anchor light there. Just LED rechargeable AA batteries. Put that in there. That shows, that's the anchor light. We'll have our dive flag there when we're diving, or during the day if you want to just trawl a fishing rod or have your fishing rod. There's heaps of mounts and stuff you can put in there, but yeah, pretty cool. There's another one up the bow here. Again, yeah, not sponsored, but just appreciate a good product. They are expensive, but you know, we've been through the little suction mounts with the big double D batteries or the D size batteries, and yeah, they just don't last. These things have stood up to the test of time. That mount was a bit low, and I didn't want to buy an extension, so I just cut up this old carbon SUP board paddle and made it so it clears the tube there. So that's our port and starboard nav light. Well, we're up the front now. I guess I'll show you the front locker. So this is, a lot of people are...
Take the nav light out.
So I'll take that off. So a lot of people ask us about this sea deck and how it holds up and how dirty it gets. Like, this gets covered in blood. There's like fishing hooks, spear guns. There's a few little dents, like you can see where the see where the marlin bill has like chafed it up and peeled it off a little bit here. But you know, for 3 years old and heavy use, it's really held up really well. It cleans up, mud crabbing, like it cleans up really well. So yeah, there's a little rail blazer mount there. This is the bow locker with the fuel. So another good thing about the Classic, which you don't get with the ultralight obviously, is the fuel line runs underneath the floor and it actually pops up at the back down here. So it just keeps all that fuel line out, and when we're in port, we can disconnect the fuel line and lock that locker up, so if someone did steal the tender, they wouldn't get very far. They'd be rowing, so.
Or towing.
Yeah, or towing. Or just on the back of a ute. But yeah, so that's our 25-litre fuel tank. Like I said, gets us about 40 nautical miles. We've got our V-sheet, life jackets, torch, our safety gear and spares in here. I'll cut back to Popao and I'll show you what's actually in there. Basically all the spares we need to get that motor going. Within reason, you know, there's no spare prop or anything in there, but we've got it on Popao. So we take the tender far offshore, obviously away from the boat. People want to know what's in our safety bag and spares kit. So I'll show you. So we've got a little dry bag here. We have our flares, offshore flares there, or inshore flares, whatever. We have our own EPIRB, which is set up just for the tender. And in the AMSA website, we've put, you know, the likely scenario when we're setting this off: shark attack, you know, boat stranded, propeller strike, something like that.
Shallow water blackout. Shallow
water blackout. Just so they can, you know, because we can't communicate obviously with them, they have a bit of a heads up on what they might be dealing with. Can of aerospark, or start your bastard, as people call it. Haven't had to use it, but it definitely gets an engine going. If you've got dirty fuel or something, it kind of can kickstart that. We also vac pack. It is in a dry bag, but we vac pack it all because we did have a lot of rain once and forgot to take the bung out of the tender, and it leaked and everything got soaked. So 2 spare spark plugs for the engine, very handy. Tools, so in there's like the 10mm socket, screwdriver, all that stuff. Every tool that I need to service and work on the outboard is in here, covered in WD-40, wrapped up in a rag. A Leatherman for miscellaneous kind of things. Jacob and Heidi bought us this tourniquet. Big thank you to our patrons Jacob and Heidi. It's the one present I hope we never have to use. But yeah, really thoughtful guys, and very comforting to know that we have this on board. Yeah, it's made by this company TACMed. They're in Coffs Harbour, I think. Yeah, this has saved many people's lives. Rick Batua,
which we listened to
on the radio. You know, the whole ordeal, which was pretty awful to hear while we were out at the reef. But yeah, tourniquet saved his life, and I'm definitely glad that we have one and recommend it for anyone spearfishing or diving on the reef.
Rick actually recommends 2.
Well, yeah.
He said you should have 2. But
yeah, we probably should have 2. So
this isn't our. We have a huge first aid kit. This is just the vitals. So if we forget to grab one,
yeah. Compass. You know, by law we need that, and that's it. Basically, that's what's in the bag. That's all that fits. Anyway, so that's what we carry in our little safety grab bag spares kit. If there's something that you're just screaming at the screen saying, I can't believe you don't have this, please let us know in the comments and we will add it. Maybe not in this bag because it's full, but anyway. Back to the walkthrough. Yeah, V-sheet, torch, life jackets, and it's fully lockable, so yeah, when we're at dock we just unplug that fuel and put a little padlock through there. Got these nice pad eyes here that I spliced up this Dyneema. That's our lifting eye there. And then we've got the same at the back. And I've also made one here just to lift the motor off when we're doing our long passages. So when we're spearfishing, you know, we probably don't like to take more than 3 people total. Just with all the guns and stuff. We'll run fins down one side, all the guns down the other. We've got fiberglass or the fish bag esky that goes down the middle. We've got a fish tub that sits underneath the seat there with our anchor. We've got a pretty serious anchor, like it's the old one from my Haynes Hunter, CQR, big chain, big rope, but you know, we swim away from the tender a fair bit, and we definitely don't want it to drift away when we're out on those remote reefs. So when we do our big trips away from the boat, we try to limit the wind to less than 15 knots. Otherwise it gets a little bit wild out there. It's been a really great tender. It can carry 6 people, like half a ton of equipment, and it still won't sink. You can flood it fully with water, which we've had crossing Moreton Bay once in 40 knot wind against tide, summer storm conditions. You just take the bung out. We had water pouring over the transom, and we still got us home every time. But that's pretty much it. If you have any further questions, drop it in the comments and we will try to answer them. Also, congrats to Daryl Green, who guessed where we were. We were at Coochie Mudlow Island in that last video. He was pretty onto it. A few people guessed it, but he was the first, so we'll get in contact, Daryl, and send you one of those Popao stubby coolers. Anyway, that wraps up this walkthrough of the tender. If you liked it, please hit the thumbs up button, comment, subscribe, all that stuff, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Anyway, that's Akale. Jesus Christ.